We are at Seafield in West Lothian, and this is the site of Seafield Weir, which was put in the 1930s, 1920s as part of an oil shale mine. This was a fairly small weir formed of local bricks, but the reason that it was so incredibly impassable to our native fish was because it's got about 8 to 10 metres of concrete skirt below it, and that apron means that you've got about 2 inches of water running along it at a time. And those 2 inches of water, well, nothing can really swim in that because it's very powerful, very fast and very shallow.
There was a lot of sediment and silt being deposited upstream of the weir, so the water level was kind of shallow and fast flowing downstream and deeper and slow moving upstream as the water was backed up behind the weir.
The Almond is a river that's very much impacted by its industrial history. The River Life project, which came to an end in 2021, undertook a lot of work on 8 weirs. Seafield was one of those intended first weirs, but sometimes with river restoration, the biggest tool that you have on hand is patience. So I visited this weir in 2018 and we're now in 2022 and it's finally been removed. This has been funded by the Nature Restoration Fund, which is a Nature Scot fund. While the weir took a few hours to come out, there's been a lot of work in the background to get to this. So we've needed a car licence, we've needed an otter licence, we've needed an environmental and ecological mitigation plan. We've needed a whole host of different plans and paperwork. What's been really exciting about this is that we've been working with a landowner. He's our contractor on site. It's local guys. What's also really exciting is that we've got absolutely no waste being generated from this site. So all the material that's coming out that formed that weir and that concrete is being redistributed into drainage for the neighbouring farm and onto the site as well. Basically no waste and a fully restored river channel at the end of this, so it's a win-win for everything. So the difference between Seafield compared to downstream weir barrier easements that we've done is that we're able to remove it because it's been classed as a low risk removal. So having the weir removed actually creates what we call the longitudinal connectivity of that river. So it's basically upstream and downstream now don't have an interruption in them. It's gone from being a big silty pond to this lovely gravelly thing with lots of different things going on. So it's a really glorious bit of habitat now, and I can't believe the change in such a short amount of time.
Yeah, no, it looks fantastic, and yeah, like you can just see the variety in the channel dimensions and the depth of the water at different points, and that then impacts upon the flow velocities as well. So it's much more kind of natural and diverse in terms of the channel form. The same volume of water can now pass through the river system, but with the water level that is at that discharge will be much lower now than what it was before.
You can see that the river levels have already returned to historical levels and the weir's completely gone.
They had real difficulty getting it out on the day that I was on site. Really solid piece of concrete, up to 2 feet deep in some parts.
Yeah, and one of the interesting or possibly challenging things about this project is the amount of hidden structures that were below the weir that were previously unknown. And if you look at this wall coming down here, this has probably been hidden underneath the weir for almost 100 years. And now it's exposed, so it's quite interesting from a historical point of view. I think it's important to protect some of the heritage and at least give a little hint to what was here.
It's going to be really interesting to see how the wildlife recovers in this area, isn't it, over the next wee while?
Yeah, visibly it's already changing. It's going to be a rapid change, I would expect.
Yeah.
And we have already seen some trout passing through.
Feels like the river's finally just gone, oh.
Yes.
We've got this toe reinforcement of riprap and boulders. These are all boulders that have come off the site, that have come out of the agricultural field over there and things like that. So in 20 years' time when you come down here, you wouldn't know that that digger had come along and put boulders in place, which is a very different approach than we're having to take on the right-hand bank, isn't it?
Yes, the right-hand bank is an engineered bank. We'll build a line of gabions and then terrace the embankment. It'll be backfilled and then we'll put another line of gabions behind. So we'll have the step away from the river. It's a sensible approach, and it also means that in flood conditions, the water will rise to the height of the first gabion and then spill to the second height, so you're not getting the sort of same energy of water coming down the channel. Filling
these gabions takes quite a lot of time, doesn't it?
Yes, there's probably 2 tons of stone in each one, and as you can see, they're having to be done manually. It's quite important to fill the space in them so they don't collapse. one positive effect, it actually gives a nice finish to the front of the stone.
All those little gaps in there actually provide fish habitat, don't
Habitat,
they?
yeah.
So if you're a little minnow and you're being chased by a trout, actually you can go and hide in that, can't you?
Yes.
Obviously there's quite dramatic changes at the site where the weir was already, but those effects will be propagating further and further upstream. When you walk along the river, it'll just be a much more kind of pleasant environment to be in and more natural.
I think this just proves projects like this, if the trust is enabled, we can get the job done, you know, and probably a lot quicker as well.
We got removal completely done within 4 weeks, but 2
Right,
weeks of
okay.
that really included securing up all of this bank for what is going to become a domestic property on the other side. And all of that weir, all of that brick, all of that concrete is now buried under here somewhere.
Ultimately, this, along with all the other projects on the river, has connected Cramond to Seafield.
And that longitudinal connectivity means that the river flows free, which means the river can just breathe and do what it does, and it knows how to sustain our freshwater life.
Yeah.
The less intervention you do, and the more you trust it with its river processes, the better.
This, it basically lets the fish find their own way.
Yeah.